This is Glenn Hauser with World of Radio, 2236. World of Radio is a listener-supported public service program about communications around the world, above all shortwave. On this edition recorded March 28th. Afghanistan, Bolivia, Brazil, Cuba, Ethiopia, Germany, Indonesia, Iran, Japan, Kuwait, Mali, Myanmar, New Zealand, North America, Pakistan, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Spain, Turkey, UK, USA, Vatican, linguistics, and the propagation outlook. Standard disclaimer. World of Radio is supposed to be heard on shortwave, primarily, but it's also available via podcast if necessary, via several different podcasts as well. There's been a change for the Google podcast service, which is going out of business as of the 2nd of April, but it's being replaced by something else, which is YouTube podcasts. And the feed is easily accessible at www.youtube.com/@worldofradio. That is with a capital W and a capital R, all one word. You can find links to this and all the other podcasts at our page at worldofradio.com called Our Current Audio, as well as links to the latest and many, many previous World of Radio programs from our website. David Koenig of Interval Signals Online says there's a new name for Radio Afghanistan. He's been monitoring it 1730 to 1930 UT on medium wave 1107 kilohertz via remote receivers. He says the broadcaster's formal name is Radio Television Afghanistan, but all the on-air IDs I've heard are Milli Radio, that is M-I-L-L-I, which means national, or sometimes Afghanistan, pause, Milli Radio. Their website at https://rta.af seems to be completely devoted to TV, with 4 video services, live stream but no radio audio. Sometimes I have a JBA carrier, just barely audible, on 3310, such as March 24th at 0202, presumably Radio Masokchaski, which is often logged by Bob Buckner in Florida. I might have better luck if I were DXing around 10 UT. That is in Bolivia. Is this the last remaining Latin American active on 90 meters? Almost. Tropical Bands monitor shows only one other, 3365, Radio Cultura Araraquara in Brazil. On the higher bands, one of the most active Brazilian stations remaining is Radio Voz Missionaria. I measured their frequencies via remote in Brasilia, 5940.110, 9664.998, and 11750.132. This is in daytime at 1723 UT on March 26th. The previous night, 9665 had been missing unusually. It varies considerably above and below that frequency. Something's always wrong at Radio Havana, Cuba. 6,000 kilohertz, March 23rd at 0335, was the only shortwave broadcast frequency from Cuba I could find. 4765 and 5025 are both off, and no RHC found anywhere else. It was in English, but the modulation was suppressed and distorted or subtorted, making it unlistenable. On March 25th at 0631, I found RHC on 6100, where it had been absent for a long time, in Spanish, 25 over 9, but undermodulated and with some kind of noise, unlike I've heard elsewhere on RHC frequencies, and not heard since. And then there's 15140, sometimes on the air for an English hour at 19 UT, but lately it's been accompanied by squeals on the sidebands. For example, March 26th at 1940, there were spurias, carriers, plus and minus about 2.6 kilohertz, or even double that, 5.2 around 15140. Ethiopia has some regional transmitters on the 49-meter band, but Zakliangas in Greece was not having much luck hearing them, nor Radio Ethiopia on 7110. Yes, it's a long-standing intruder in the 40-meter ham band. But he says on March 27th, it was not to be heard via remote receivers between 16 and 18 UT, just noise or QRM from hams. Ron Howard in California, however, replies that he has been checking 7110 and not hearing it at 14:30 to 15 UT. In the past, he says it was an easy catch, the home service, heard signing off at 14:58 UT exactly 2 years ago via Longpath. The following from Andy, the engineer at Shortwave Radio Gold, Vincent on the River Outer in Germany. That's the station in Europe which is carrying World Radio numerous times each week, our only affiliate in Europe on shortwave. I was inquiring about A24 seasonal changes effective March 31st. He says their new schedule is 6160 from 07 to 22 UT and overlapping 3975 between 17 and midnight UT. All the World of Radio times shift 1 UT hour earlier. And between 17 and 22 UT, we're on both frequencies. Here we go with all the new World of Radio times. Saturday at 14:30, Saturday at 17:30, Sunday at 21:30, Monday at 08:30 and 19:30, Wednesday at 19:30, and Thursday at 16:30. And some additional airings are expected in the extended period between 22 and midnight UT on 3975. Via Alexander Myadlikov in Ukraine about Deutsche Welle's A24 schedules. He says they're cutting their shortwave output to a historic minimum. It's only 2 languages, Amharic at 16 to 17 daily on 15275 and 17800 via France, and Arabic at 1215 to 1300 Wednesdays only via France on 15275 and 17800, the same too. Another Arabic broadcast at 1830 to 1915 for Sudan in particular via Now in Germany, but again on 15275 and 17840. The German broadcasts are for Sudan in particular and are registered only through the 26th of June rather than the whole season. Stephen Luce says, wow, the Hausa shortwave output has been completely eliminated. A huge surprise. I thought that with the current morning, afternoon, and evening broadcast, that had a significant audience. I expected Amharic to be the next cut. The Hausa broadcasts were in the A24 HFCC registrations. It would not surprise me to find DW completely gone from shortwave by the A25 season, if not B24, says Stephen Luce. And Bill Tilford replies, what I find extraordinary is that there doesn't seem to be any radio auf Deutsch anywhere, not shortwave, satellite, or live stream. I guess expats and people wanting to brush up on the language are supposed to watch TV. On Sea Haven State Beach, California, Ron Howard continues monitoring RRI Nabiri, Indonesia, on 7289.93, or trying to. It's quite irregular. On March 24th, heard from fading up at 0755, but it suddenly cut off already at 0812. On March 26th, off the air when checked at 0808. And on March 28th, checked from 0755, but no signal. Of course, around that hour, 08 UT, one may hear the Voice of Indonesia Channel 2 English relay via WRMI, 0800 UT on 7780. David Kernick, Available Signals Online, reports on Iran. The Arabic program from VIRI or IRIB, that is Voice of Palestine, Voice of the Islamic Palestinian Revolution, was missing from its usual 1830 to 1930 UT slot on 21 March, as monitored via a remote in Qatar. Frequencies had been 1224, 765, and maybe 1161. He wondered if this was suspended due to Ramadan. Arthur Posner asked, does IRIB have any shortwave broadcasting lately? I cannot find them anyplace. I note that Iran has registered a very full schedule for A24 with HFCC. Frequency schedule still in the B23 season. At 1620 UT, I found a few on the air but could not confirm those were Iran. Kai Ludwig in Germany says at some point last year the Zahedan shortwave facility has been decommissioned, and the Sirjan operations have been cut back further to 2 transmitters. There were originally 10. Richard Langley in New Brunswick says, although we in the West might disagree with what Iran might say, it's important that we hear them. It was nice when we could receive Iran with a good signal, and has been trying to hear and record their 2 scheduled English broadcasts at 1520 to 1620 on 9650 and 1920 to 2020 on 6040 and 11880. He does get carriers, but almost non-existent audio on some of the frequencies, but 6040 was vacant. Via Alex Myadlikov in Ukraine, we have the NHK A24 schedule, including token English. at 05 UT on 13710 via France to South Africa, at 111,815 via Yamata to Southeast Asia, and then on medium wave 1386 Lithuania, 1510 to 1525 Monday through Friday, and 1520 to 1530 on Saturday and Sunday. Now the 05 and 14 broadcasts are 25 minutes long on weekdays and 30 minutes on weekends. We still might be able to hear them in Eastern or Western North America. Stephen Luce asks, regarding the U.S. Agency for Global Media budget, has any progress been made on expansion of the Kuwait transmission facility? It seems that has been dragging along for years now. Mike Cooper replies, extracting this from the budget request document. An effort to increase transmission capacity at the USAGM Kuwait Transmitting Station, or KTS. Operating costs are relatively low, and the station is strategically situated to cover remaining shortwave audiences in Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. The project will conclude in fiscal year 2025, and it may facilitate closing or reducing usage of other costlier sites. Some antenna work has already been done, and building expansion should be complete by mid-fiscal year 2024. They've been procuring new shortwave transmitters to fill the bays in the new building, and Michel Frémy in Belgium says at his Radio du Monde, or Radio Magazine Facebook, USAGM, station in Al Jahra, that's Jahra, Kuwait, is launching a call for tenders for 4 new 250 kilowatt shortwave transmitters. RTM Mali domestic service modulation on 5995 is sometimes normal, such as March 23rd at 0623, but during the same hour, March 22nd, 27th, and 28th, there was again a noise blob on the frequency instead, not DRM, but I'm beginning to wonder if it could be some kind of jamming due to the unstable political situation there since a military coup in 2020, and VOA News says elections scheduled for February of this year have been postponed. Ron Howard reports that Radio Tazin, Thazin, Myanmar, was, after being silent for a while, is again being heard on 7345, underneath a stronger signal from China, the correct language for Myanmar. This was March 24th at 11:25 UT. Regarding the new 824 schedule for Radio New Zealand Pacific, Chris Mackerel in New Zealand says, just wait till you see what the new right-wing government does to public broadcasting here in New Zealand. I continue to hear a weak signal at many different hours on 11514.9 approximately, the pirate Hikari FM in Arizona or Sonora, I am sure. March 22nd at 1706, I was getting it much better via the California Coast Remote at KFS on its southeastern antenna. Announcements in Japanese, high-pitched voice like a child or cartoonish, also still going at 1857 and 2142. I wonder if it's just relaying offline a Japanese real station, Radio Hikari, which has a stream. Mike Cooper forwards a story from Associated Press of Pakistan. Shahira Shahid highlights government's commitment to strengthen Radio Pakistan. Dated March 22nd. The Federal Secretary for Info and Broadcasting, Shahira Shahid, underscored the crucial role played by the Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation, emphasizing its extensive reach across the nation with news delivery in multiple languages. Improvements in transmitters are underway to guarantee seamless transmission alongside establishment of a centralized broadcast setup in Rawat, Islamabad. Shortwave never mentioned, nor really external broadcasting, but let's hope there may be some effect on that as well. In the British TX Club, Alan Pennington says, at midnight 5 UT, 28 March, I heard a station on 5838 USB repeatedly playing the Russian song Katyusha, sung by Anna German, with brief buzz and a pip between repeats of the song. Fair strength. Anyone know what this station is and maybe the transmitter location? Here's a bit of it. was filed tentatively under Russia. The media magazine you monitor with your mind. World of Radio 2236. A non-commercial service, as is our website, worldofradio.com. Thanks this week for financial support from Richard Colgan in Texas, who sent a contribution via PayPal to WORADIO@yahoo.com. One may also contribute via money order or check on a U.S. bank to Glenn Hauser, P.O. Box 1684, ENID, OK, 73702. That horrible roar buzz we mentioned last week, believed to be from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, continues to be heard at many hours of the day on 11935, still as of March 28th. Believed to be the transmitter originally attempting to carry the Republic of Yemen radio relay on 11860 before it made 3 frequency changes. Kai Ludwig in Germany says, I wonder if the buzz on 11935 is our good old friend from years ago, who at times splattered over hundreds of kilohertz. That would mean the Riyadh shortwave plant is still alive. Stephen Luce replies, didn't the Saudi Broadcasting Authority install a number of new shortwave transmitters a few years back? I seem to recall a number of discussions about that. It seems odd they would give up on the platform unless they've determined the audience has gone elsewhere. Wolfgang Buchel replies, 4 new shortwave transmitters were erected in Jeddah, a new antenna site a decade ago. 11935 is the faulty 9th transmitter at Riyadh. But now, Ed Sylvester, the Navy dude living in Riyadh, 7Z1ES, Jeddah is not active. Neither is Ha'il. Only Riyadh is active, albeit barely. They're hoping to get new transmitters if they end up continuing shortwave. They had 3 transmitter sites, now down to only 1, Riyadh. They plan to dismantle that and either move to a new site or discontinue shortwave. Not yet decided. It's Ramadan here, so things are in a slight state of flux. We will know more after the Eid holiday, April 15th. The token English broadcast from Spanish Foreign Radio, March 22nd, started off with news about their own station. I later pulled out the podcast so I could transcribe exactly what they said and quoted it in my reports. Here's part of that. The president of Spanish National Television and Radio defended our shortwave station in Parliament regarding the message that the corporation is adopting to guarantee the continuity and the future of Radio Exterior's shortwave broadcast. The president announced that the purchasing of a new transmitter, the first of 5, is already underway. These will be installed in the center in Noblejas, Toledo, one of the biggest antenna fields in Europe. The Corp is also working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to draft a collaboration agreement that will contemplate the role and relevance of the shortwave service provided by Radio Exterior de España. The president mentioned that shortwave has become an alternative to blocking internet and other info channels, as has been in the war between Russia and Ukraine. And we guarantee sharing info from Spain to America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. Also, their Spanish DX program, Amigos de la Onda Corta, had much more about this, including a visit to Noblejas. Voice of Turkey has been broadcasting in English to North America at the very same hour, inconveniently, as Spain. 2300 UT, but it's 2200 for both of them in the A24 season with daylight shifting time in Europe. From HFCC registrations, here are the new English times and frequencies for Voice of Turkey from March 31st. At 12:30 UT, 17620. That's aimed toward Western Europe, and it also could reach North America. 1630 on 11660. 1830 on 9750. 2030 on 9875. 2200 on 11785. And 0300 the next day on 6165 and 7275. The frequencies for North America are 11785 and 7275. If you don't hear the 22 UT broadcast on 11785, try 9875 in case they're fouling up, not changing frequencies after the previous English. On March 27th, the 2300 broadcast was missing from both frequencies. It seems that BBC Radio 4 will continue a while longer on longwave 198, but in the British TX Club it's reported that the Radio 4 medium wave frequencies would be switched off from the 15th of April, and it's rather confusing about which particular programs may still be heard on other platforms. Mike Cooper forwards a report from a BBC government website, 21 March, An expert panel has been appointed to advise on the BBC's future funding. 9 leading industry experts selected to provide independent advice and expertise to the government as part of the BBC funding review. Regarding the phone number to hear BBC World Service in North America, we mentioned last week, a reply from Jake Longwell of our affiliate Global Community Radio. The 605 number is not valid. When I dial it, I get redirected to a different number, 641-793-6312, but it's behind some sort of paywall. Apparently, it all depends on which particular phone service you're hooked up to. Regarding BBC possibly being relayed by WRMI, this may not be possible. All distribution rights for the World Service in the U.S. are held by American Public Media. So I believe WRMI would need to pay APM for access to World Service programming. It is not cheap. One of our local public radio stations in upstate New York, WRVO, ran announcements during their overnight BBC relays asking if anyone was listening. And they said they pay $18,000 a year just for BBC World Service programming. The ridiculously high fees charged by APM for World Service make it cost prohibitive for smaller non-commercial stations like LPFMs and community broadcasters to access. If these fees were lowered or even done away with, it would open the door for many more stations to offer the World Service. Tony Pavick in BC says, "How dare the BBC make any complaints about budgetary constraints keeping them off shortwave when the dough is rolling in from actions like that? It's as if they don't really want to be on radio anymore and want to be a streaming-only service." Hans-Jörg Wienerford's publicity from BBC, at BBC Studios, the commercial arm of BBC, and BBC News, has announced the global launch of the all-new BBC.com and BBC app, transforming the way digital audiences read, watch, and find the BBC's renowned journalism and storytelling outside the UK, available to users worldwide. John Filiozzi says, "Why don't we just give up on the BBC being a public service organization, exemplifying public service values over commercial media values? With every decision the BBC makes, it hastens the arrival of the day when it becomes no different conceptually than any other commercial media organization, chasing revenue over all else. It was nice while it lasted, but in this important, unique respect, it will soon be all over." Tony Pavick says, "I wrote to them about the BBC News app on phones having ads for online casinos right in the middle of news stories about terrorist attacks. The reply was, 'Not our problem.'" Getting back to BBC by phone, Ken Zicke says, "The South Dakota number 605-781-9836 does connect no problem from my Verizon cell phone, but the audio quality is not pleasant to listen to, maybe even worse than on Sirius XM." Stephen Luce says, "One thing to remember is that there is an election due in the UK later this year, with a very strong possibility of a change in government, which will have a significant impact on any future BBC plans." And getting back to Radio 4, Kari Kallio refers us to this website, which includes a petition. It is keeplongwave.co.uk. Ben Cobb sends FCC news that an Indiana County Travelers Information Station has been authorized to increase power temporarily from 10 to 100 watts during the first half of April due to handle traffic associated with the solar eclipse on April 8th. It is WQSI 562 in Martinsville, Indiana on 1700. March 27th at 22:13, I was hearing a Heifer beacon on 13563 plus CW, sending the call sign over and over, RQ, as in Romeo, Quebec. Not listed anywhere. Does anyone know where this is? Richard Langley says VOA has a jazz program, Jazz from the Heart of America, over their FM stations overseas and streamed over the VOA Global English Stream. It's Sundays at 12 UT and repeated on Saturday. Regarding the U.S. AGM budget, Dan Robinson says VOA faces a money crunch. It needs to move the agency's physical headquarters and pay for a federal employee pay raise of 5%. And there's conflicting information about the U.S. AGM budget. Is it a reduction of 1.5% or 0.65%? Bill Tilford calls the new broadcast to Ukraine in Spanish Radio Martiski and suggests that it's also getting into Cuba, avoiding jamming. WTWW update from George McClintock as of March 26th. 9475 is now on the air, at least from 20 to 22 UT, with Pastor Pete Peters. then miscellaneous programming until midnight UT, at midnight switching to 5085 for Ancient Word Radio, and extending to 0430 with religious music the extra half hour, except I assume on Saturdays, World of Radio at 04. On 1670 kilohertz, UT Sunday, March 24th at 0152, I was hearing a 1 kilohertz tone restarting every 11.5 seconds, and in between, this is the Brewers Radio Network, i.e. from WOZN in Madison, Wisconsin, with a sports format, but no baseball yet. Ron Trotto forwards a story from TheStreet.com that another radio network has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It's High Plains Radio, which has stations in Texas, Arkansas, and New Mexico. The major group, iHeartRadio, had also filed for bankruptcy some time before. John Figliozzi says all of iHeart's programming can only be described as pandering and lowest common denominator BS. One can find nothing the least bit intellectually challenging or artistically creative there. So, more conclude, there's nothing there worth listening to unless they are angry, aged, and male and need their worst views about everything habitually confirmed. Try to find anything, especially on AM radio, that speaks to the specific community. It's all syndication and machines fooling listeners that they're listening to something local when they're not. Advisors to the commercial radio industry have been telling them for years that the banality of their product is the problem. That advice has been ignored, and that industry is finding itself no longer competitive. It will die and deserves to, says John Figliozzi. Some DX publications refer to Vatican radio transmissions from Santa Maria di Galleria as from Vatican City extraterritorial area. Gianni Serra in Roma says this is not correct. It is the Holy See or Apostolic See, a particular juridical personality under international law, perhaps unique in the world. Holy See emblem is a bit different from that of Vatican City, but there's often confusion between Vatican City and the Holy See. In the World of Radio group, he goes into great detail about this. From the point of view of international law, the Holy See is a distinct entity from the Vatican City state, over which the Holy See exercises sovereignty. Foreign embassies are accredited to the Holy See and not to the Vatican City state, since the latter does not enjoy full international sovereignty. Liz Cameron in Michigan says, buy linguistics books. This one is a great adjunct to the hobby. The World's Major Languages by Merritt Ruhlen. I spell Merrittruhlen. Mike Terry forwards this from spaceweather.com. A CME struck Earth's magnetic field on March 24th at 1437 UT. The impact opened a crack in our planet's magnetosphere and sparked a severe G4 class geomagnetic storm, the strongest geomagnetic storm since September of 2017. Yes, I noticed that the K-index reached 8, and SWPC predicted as of March 25th on that date A and K indices of 50 and 7. After a respite, there might be minor G1 levels, peaking April 3rd with A and K indices of 15 and 4. But the threat of more coronal mass ejections and subsequent storms remains. Solar flux was expected to peak at 210 on March 27th and 28th and descend to 170 by April 3rd, and further peaks to 190 predicted for April 6th and 7th, 14th and 16th. And that concludes World of Radio 2236. Glenn Hauser here with a standard disclaimer inviting you to hear me again next week.